Well, hello there, everyone. Hello there, everyone, and welcome to our Learn from Home While You Work from Home webinar on Power BI. We're so excited that you all took some time out of your day to join us. We'll go ahead and get started with a little bit of introductions. It's the top of the hour. Sit back, relax, and we'll learn a little bit about Power BI today. Just some brief introductions. My colleague and good friend David Gerson's on the line with us today. He's going to help keep us on point, manage that Q&A. You probably saw his emails from time to time, encouraging everyone to come join us for our webinar series. Thank you to him. David is a very active member of the International Association of Microsoft Channel Partners, the IMCP, and also, like most of the team members in our organization, very active in the user group community. You've probably seen him around, maybe not recently because we're all staying home, right? A little bit about me and Dynamic Consulting. My name is Sean Dorward. I am the practice manager for the SMB practice here at Dynamic Consulting, a Microsoft MVP. I do write a bit on my personal blog site, lifehacks365.com. Also a little fun podcast. Two of my friends and I co-host MBS podcast. Very active in the user groups as well. Feel free to check out lifehacks365.com where I talk about tips and tricks. I call them life hacks for Excel, Power BI, Dynamics GP, Business Central, etc. So a little bit about Dynamic Consulting, if I could just for about a minute or so. Dynamic Consulting, we're a software solutions provider. We help businesses all around the world increase efficiencies with their accounting system or their ERP. You may have heard of some of these things: Dynamics 365, certainly Microsoft Dynamics GP, Business Central, formerly known as NAV, Finance and Operations, formerly known as Dynamics AX, Dynamics 365 for Sales, formerly known, sorry, you know that's the Microsoft way, but we service and support all of these top tier products in the Dynamics 365 ecosystem, and most certainly the Power Apps, Power Automate, and Power BI, which we're going to dig into a bit today. In addition to providing those services as a consulting firm, we also offer implementation, training, help with best practices, anything and everything we can do to help your business succeed and increase your ROI when it comes to the Dynamics platform. We also are a Microsoft Office provider, so all those cool, fun things that you get to use throughout the day, PowerPoint, Outlook, Excel, you name it, we also service and support there. So a little bit about this series. As you know, the world has been experiencing the COVID coronavirus pandemic, and as everyone sort of was forced to work from home, we wanted to do something to give back to the community. And although our expertise isn't in the medical field, we said, put our heads together and said, how can we somehow give back to the community? So we're offering these webinar series. We've had such tremendous feedback and attendance to these events. We're going to continue them on throughout next month as well, so look for more of that. And our goal is to help keep each other motivated. Dynamics Consulting is born as a remote organization, but not everyone is. So we think it's a great time to kind of reload and arm yourself with a new skill set, and Power BI is one of those cool things that can certainly help. Next week, our last in this three-part series, it's not the last in our overall series, we're going to talk about general office tips and tricks. So I'll have some cool stuff to show that might help you be more efficient about Outlook and Power BI and Word and Excel. Won't get into any access or anything like that, but definitely those four top ones we will be sure to cover. And we have more to come, as I mentioned. So thank you for your attention to that. We'll go ahead and talk about our agenda briefly. We're going to cover what is Power BI, sort of briefly, so folks know what it is we're talking about and what the value in using this type of tool is. We're going to talk about how to connect to the data so that you can really leverage the Power Query behind the scenes that does all the transforming of data, and we'll talk about that as well. And the last, but most importantly, is visualizations, and that's really the key here that we'll be focusing on. So I love data. We need more data. And so let's jump into Power BI. Before we do, a little teaser here. Most things that we're going to be learning about today, kind of behind the scenes with this tool called Power Query. You probably heard of Power BI, but maybe not Power Query. Most of those things you're going to be able to also transfer that skill and use the same Power Query engine in Excel. So that's sort of a double win there, I think. Make sure it's a little different, not too different. It definitely is transferable knowledge. So when we talk about Power BI and what is it, if you kind of look at the left of the screen here, today we're going to be going through this process, this exercise, using the Power BI desktop. It's a free install from Microsoft. It's an application just like anything else you would install. Each data source, if you will, has to get connected to Power BI. Now, some of those are called services, which means the data is available to you sort of on demand, authenticated on demand. Some can be pointed locally and that's what we're going to be doing today for our instructional, because quite frankly, it's a little easier that way, and we probably, fingers crossed, won't have too many hiccups along the way. But the end goal there is you can either consume that data yourself. Let's say you connect to something and you want to build a little bit of a KPI or key performance indicators, or really slice and dice your data for you. Power BI desktop, it's free. It's not a paid product. You can use it for free to get started. And it's great because if it's something you're using for just yourself, you really don't have to go beyond that. But the real true power in Power BI, much like anything else in the Dynamics ecosystem, in the Microsoft ecosystem, is the service that comes along with it. The service that comes along with it is really when you want to start sharing and collaborating your reports and your Power BI pages, dashboards, if you will. That's when you get out into the Power BI service. So the service is in the cloud. So when you, from the desktop, will actually publish, you can publish, and then that report or that dashboard, if you will, becomes available in the cloud from the service, so that you can consume that data. You and others can consume that data on any device, mobile, tablet, you name it. Now, when you get out into that, those are paid services. It starts at $10 a user a month. And there are ways to also, we talk about that service, there are ways to use what is called a Power BI gateway, kind of looking at that bottom middle section there, where it takes on-premises data and syncs it to the cloud in periodic fashion so that that data is updated in the service for folks to consume remotely. When you're on premises and you're pointing to something on premises like a SQL Server database, every time you refresh it, it's going to go grab that data. But if you want it in the service, you need a way to get that data up there securely. And that's really what the gateway's for. We're going to be talking about a very small amount of Power BI features and functionalities and capabilities today. We have a total of 60 minutes, and I'm just going to mention that this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more that we're not going to be able to cover today that gets into great detail. Microsoft has got, and we'll be sure to get you a link to one of these, to the collection of samples that Microsoft has offered. There's just so much that this tool can do, all the way down the line to embedding into a website, which I think is incredible. So in today's world, you may go to John Hopkins website to look at that COVID-19 statistics. That's a graph embedded in a website, so that when you're consuming that, that's what I mean when I say embed in a website, so you can get some of that information out. So a little bit about how this architecture works. This is not the whole picture. In fact, I have another slide that is just packed full of icons and flows, but I thought this gives a good representation. So when I mentioned we're going to be using the Power BI desktop, you at your home office, probably wearing your pajamas like I am, really ready to get back out into the world when all this is behind us. But you need to, if you're going to try to go along with this video, which you'll be getting the recording as well, you need to install the Power BI desktop. You'll likely want to use your office credentials, your work email. Maybe you already have it, but there's the URL, powerbi.microsoft.com, and go to products and choose Power BI desktop to get that downloaded onto your machine. Now, from your mobile or your tablet, you know, those kind of things, you go to the store and search for Power BI to get it, but you're not going to be able to design like we are today in those areas. That's done predominantly on the desktop. Some of it can be done in the service, but I like to say that I start on the desktop. There's just more power there. So throughout our time today, we're going to really focus on 4 elements here: connecting to the data, transforming the data, and combining the data. And then lastly, the visual. The visual is really key here. But in order to get those visualizations to work and to pop and to tell the story, you need to get to the data. You need to transform it so it's clean, it's usable. And if you need to combine it, build relationships from one data set to another, you have to do that. So we'll talk a little bit briefly with some of these slides, and then we're going to go into the product and build a few things and walk and talk through that way. So when I talk about Power BI and connecting, there are so many different data sources that Power BI can connect to. Everything from simple CSV file to an XML file, Microsoft Azure, certainly Excel files, and anything that has open data, OData, or some sort of API that allows you to tap into data. And Facebook's one of those. So that is one of those that you can connect for marketing statistics. So if you do any marketing on Facebook, you can leverage some of that too. Whatever you're connecting to, and it doesn't have to be just one, but whatever you're connecting to, ultimately, Power BI is sort of the tool that puts the data front and center and does some of the end modeling, if you will. But Power Query does the transforming in the background. And we'll definitely be digging into that and a lot of its capability today. So when you get your data, I'm talking about data that's coming from, if you envision a CSV file or a text file, it might have too many columns, like maybe you don't need a lot of that data, or maybe there's extra headers at the top, or things have errors in it. Power Query can replicate those steps of cleaning or transforming the data every single time so that you don't have to do it. If you use Excel and you run a macro to clean up data, or a repeatable process every month to get rid of the top 3 rows and maybe the bottom 3 rows and find and replace errors, Power Query is way better of an option. So I think you're going to love it. We'll talk about that quite a bit. And next up here, this is Power BI desktop when I come in. Now this is just a screenshot, and we're going to move the desktop into the view here in just a moment. But there's some key areas here that I want to talk about. So if you've never seen this, you may just not really fully get how to get started. And so right there where I'm pointing to, that is your main area. That's your report area. So you can see the little yellow bar to the left. The report area is activated. So that's why I see things like filters, my visualizations blade. I think they're still called blades. My fields blade, and then naturally my pages at the bottom. So these are sort of like Excel tabs. In fact, I call them tabs myself, but they're technically pages. So right now we just have one there in our screenshot. That's a little bit about what those areas are. Now, naturally, the ribbon at the top, and we'll go through some of that, but a lot of it really isn't commonly used to get started. And then lastly, this white area here, which is small for the screenshot, that's our canvas. That's where we're going to be designing and dropping our tiles on there. Tile is a visualization. So when we talk about visualizations, I like to use this analogy because this is actually, there's a true story behind this, but I'll spare you from that. Imagine if you were driving your vehicle. We all kind of immediately translate or equate dashboard to when we're driving. We're not doing a lot of that now, so maybe try to remember with me. But imagine if you had to look at your dashboard and you saw streams of text and numbers, and you had to analyze that and figure out the value in that data on your own. Imagine if you had to do that. Like, so if you just saw a rolling temperature list, or in this case, like the PSI in your tires. Now, sure, you can look at this and see that the passenger side rear tire is very low, but remember, we're probably doing 60, 70 miles an hour, and we don't want to have to look that much. So we use a visualization. We use a visualization to get us the important data immediately to us so that we can make decisions with what we need to make decisions on. We don't need to know the good tires in this example. We need to know the bad tire. And just like that, yeah, I could have figured it out, but isn't it a whole lot easier? And that's really the value in visualizations in Power BI, in any tool really, but talking specifically about Power BI. So when I work with customers all across the globe, that's really what I'm asking them. What is it that is important to you to see quickly? You could drill into it later or on demand, but what is it that you need to see on a high level? So just a little example. We talked about connecting a little already, talked about transforming. These are examples we're going to actually put into play. One thing I wanted to point out is I called this Power Query a repeatable task. So when we make changes to the data that we bring in, now we don't have to make any changes, but likely you will. When you make those changes, they're actually tracked in applied steps, and I'll show you that, but I think that's really important because the work is done with the Power Query engine, so you don't have to have that process change. So let's say you're pointing to a data source that someone else is also using, and if you had to change it, it would affect them directly. But here we can take the data that others are using and make the changes on our own, because the changes you make in Power Query don't affect the living data, the data that you're connected to, which is really cool. Some examples of those changes when we transform: removing columns. If you've got 100 columns and you need 4, why bother processing all 100 when you only need the 4? Converting data types. I know you probably have stumbled with painful aspects of whether it's a text or a number and how dates work. Splitting and merging columns and sorting data, getting rid of errored fields, aggregating and summarizing data. If you find and replace text, the example I like to use there is if you imagine you sell widget 1 and it's called widget 1 now, but 6 months ago it was called widget 2, but you want to analyze the sales of that item together. So you can run a process that just replaces widget 2 with widget 1, and now everything will be considered the same. And unpivoting data for pivot tables. As accountants and analysts, pivoting data is often a direction we take, but sometimes we get data that's already pivoted. Power Query has a built-in unpivot task, which I really, really like. And then lastly, we talked about before visualizations as connect, transform, and combine. Last is combine. So 2 data sets, 3 data sets, 17 data sets, whatever it is, if they're relatable and you want your visualizations to be interactive as things change from one data set to the other, we can combine them. So a little bit more about visualizations. What you're seeing here is a sample dashboard. Dashboard is an actual term that is used on the Power BI service. I use the term dashboard sort of a little looser than that. When I organize a page in Power BI, I consider it a dashboard. It's not a Power BI air quote dashboard, but it's a dashboard on my page. So just like to show this slide to give you some idea on what kind of pop you can get from your data. So simple actual numbers, that's great too. And even some location dependent visualizations. There are visualizations that we'll talk about that come with Power BI. There are some in the marketplace, and then there are custom visuals. This is a custom visual from a logistics company. They were trying to track the paths of certain 18-wheelers, and they dropped this using lat and longitude specs from start to destination so they could see and try to clean up those paths. Actually, this one I think is from an airline. I doubt the tractor trailer drove over the Gulf of Mexico, but anyway. I like this one too. This is a custom one. So if you imagine a situation where an adjuster is trying to ensure, or you as a consumer are trying to ensure that the proper areas of vehicle that have been damaged from an accident have been identified. Really difficult to disseminate that on a text version, but if you're able to translate that into a visual and see, so if there was damage on the rear bumper, but you don't see it on here, you know something was missed on a checkbox somewhere. I really like those. There are paid visualizations, very specific ones, but most of the ones that I use, in fact, all the ones that I use are free. So data sets, I keep throwing that word around, that term around. We're talking specifically about a collection of data. That could be coming from one source, multiple sources, etc. And then I think I mentioned this already, but a page is that tab at the bottom. I kind of am guilty, like I mentioned, of calling that a dashboard, but truly it is a page that I kind of tend to build as a dashboard. And then that lastly, each visualization, they're represented with the term tile. So when we say tile, that's what we're referring to an individual visualization. So the desktop, we're almost there. We're ready to pull the desktop up. I mentioned it's got those three areas: the report area, the report area, the table area, and the relationships area. That's another area that I think folks kind of struggle with when we get started because it's not jump off the page obvious. Alrighty, so in the Power Query Editor, when we go into get data or edit queries, the Power Query Editor opens. You see at the top there, my window is labeled Power Query Editor. This has three general areas as well. The left side, which is the query pane, these are our data connections, our data sources, and each one is represented as a query. Then the center, which is the data pane, this is where all of our data from that query is displayed. And then on the right is the query settings. This is where we track the applied steps when we transform the data. So I wanted to give that. Alrighty, so let's go ahead, and I have Power BI desktop right here. So this is my desktop. I have done absolutely nothing with it. I created a new file. I saved it called webinar sample, and I wish us all luck. Let's go ahead and give this a shot. So we're on the report pane. Our canvas is much larger. We've got our filter, our visualizations, and our fields. Notice our fields are completely empty because we haven't connected to any data yet. So step one, we have to connect to data. We can add things to our canvas, but there's nothing we can do with it beyond putting the placeholder there because we don't have data. And how do we get data for Power BI? We come up into the home ribbon and we go to get data. Now get data here. These are most common, but if you go to more, we're gonna be getting from Excel today. But if you go to more, you can get a sense of all the areas that you can connect to. So Access databases, local on-premises SQL servers, Azure SQL Server, SQL database, some online services, SurveyChimp or Mailchimp if you use that, GitHub for OData connections out there and APIs, all sorts of things. Including a folder. You can connect to a folder as a data source. So imagine some job runs that dumps a file into a folder every month and you want to look at all the files in the folder. You can do that, certainly Excel, and that's what we're going to be doing today. So let's take a look at what we're going to connect to. Let's see, I've got this file here called sales file, and it's an Excel file. If I can get that to open on the correct window. Okay, let me bring it over. Sorry about that. So here's my file. My file's got a table, 2 tabs, 2 tables. This is my product list, rather short. Office updates are available. We'll wait till after the webinar to do that. Sales. So if I look at my sales, and I double click, go all the way down, I'm at 200,000 rows in this table, and I have no concerns using this for our webinar today. Now, you may connect to an Excel file just fine. You may connect to an Excel file and or other things. It doesn't have to be just one type of data source. So we're going to go ahead and close that, but I wanted to show you what that looked like. So we're going to get that data. So we're going to choose the type of data we're going to get. We're going to choose connect at the bottom. Now, here's my file. There's my sales file. I'm just going to select that. Now what happens next is it's going to read the file and it's going to present to me options. It may be hard to see here, but these icons are indicating the type of option. So I've got a table called products. Actually, I think that's the tab. No, that's the table. This is the tab. So I've got tabs. If I click on products, you can see I get a sample preview. I'm going to stick with the tables. And I'm going to go and just get products 1. There's my products. And you have a couple options here, cancel for sure, or load. I always go into transform data because it's inevitable. I usually have some field I need to get rid of or change, etc. Now, when I went into transform data, what that did was behind on my other monitor, sorry about that, it opens up the Power Query Editor in a separate window. That's expected behavior. Don't let that freak you out. In the Power BI actual desktop app, you see it says there are pending changes in your queries that have not been applied. It's saying that because I opened that query in Power Query Editor, and that is a warning that says, hey, your query changes have not been applied. And that's okay. You're going to see that every time you first connect. Now up here in the top left, you see I've got three options: close and apply, apply and close. What this means is close the Power Query Editor and apply the changes to Power BI Desktop, or apply only. So if I hit apply, it's going to apply it out there to Power BI. And now that error went away, that warning went away. Any changes I make in here, so if I just double click on this and I rename this field, it triggers and it says, whoop, you've made changes you didn't apply. So don't let this panic you. It's really important though. So let me put that back to description, keep it nice and clean. And we can close and apply. And if we close and apply now, I haven't done a thing yet. I'm going to close and apply. It's going to apply my changes, get rid of my warning. And now I have my query and my fields in the fields blade. Now what happens for a lot of folks when they first get started in Power BI is they get to this point and they really kind of not sure what to do. But first, what is important to know is how to get back into the query editor, because it's okay to go back in there. In fact, it's quite common. So all you have to do is go up to edit queries. Edit queries is going to open up the Power Query Editor, and now I'm back in here. Remember, we talked about my query pane. So there's products. I'm going to double click on that and just get rid of the one. And I'm going to note this renamed columns in my applied step. I'm going to delete that because remember when I was just showing you around, I put a 2 at the end. I don't really need that. So I'm going to remove that. And that's sort of the value, one of the values in applied steps. If you make a mistake and you make a change, as you make changes here, everything gets recorded here. And to undo it, there's no undo except you can come over here and delete it. You can also come in and go and make changes, which we'll talk about here in a moment. So when I look at this data, I've got my item number, a description, and a URL. I really don't need to change my headers, my column descriptions, my column names. I'm happy with that. But I only brought in one of those tables and I want to bring in the other one as well. So I'm going to go right from within Power Query Editor. I can go back out to the desktop and go to get data, but I don't have to. I can start right here in new source. I'm going to go to new source. And I'm going to say Excel again. I'm going to connect to the same file, which doesn't have to be just, I'm just showing you the steps. This can be multiple different data sources. So I brought in products. Now I'm going to bring in the sales. So there's my sales. And I'm going to say OK. So the OCD in me every time, plus it's really helpful and makes it easier to follow the work you've done. I like to give the query a proper name. So we'll call this sales. Now, so we'll talk a bit about query editor here. So if I look at each one, I've got two queries, I've got products, and I've got sales. And I look at each one of these and I decide, do I want to keep each of these columns? Let me just show you. I'm going to connect to a new data source. Actually, no, let me back up. I make the decision, do I want to keep all these columns? And in my case, I do. I try to keep this clean for our demonstration, but there are things that I need to do to this data. So if you note on my products query, I've got the item number, item ID, and on my sales, I've got the product ID, but it's combined with the category, which is my sales location. And I need to separate that. This is pretty common as well. So we can run through all of these options in the Power Query Editor. This is really where your transformation efforts begin. It's not where they end because there are things you can do out in Power BI, but this is really where they begin. So if I wanted to, for example, if I needed to separate this column into two, which I do, I can just right click on this and go to split column by delimiter. Now, certainly that is a menu option in the ribbon, but we're going to do it this way right there, split column, same thing. We're just going to right click and go to split column by delimiter. Now what Power Query does is it recognizes a delimiter, and in my case it's a little tricky because I've got the dash in there, my item ID, but my delimiter truly is the /. So I'm just going to update that with the / and hit tab. Now it's going to separate each occurrence of the delimiter. If there's more than one in there and you want to set it to the left or right most, you can. So I'm going to say okay. Watch some magic there. Now it split that over into two columns and it added the step, split column by delimiter. So if I go above that in my applied steps, it actually puts the data back to the state it was in before that step. So I can see that progression, and then it changed my type there. So I could probably remove that, but I'll leave that there. That was an auto insert. So that looks good. I'm happy with that. And I'm going to just double click on the header because I don't like the sloppiness of these names. And I'm going to call this product. And I'm going to call this location. Okay, so far so good. So now we have two data sources, products and sales. Well, we got some information in here. We've got the number of units sold, the revenue, the costs associated with it, and who sold it, the product, and what date. So we're going to go ahead and close and apply this. And we're going to talk about a little bit of the stuff that has happened now along the way. So what's happened now is on the field blade, we have our two queries, products and sales, that we can just simply collapse or expand. Dates get automatically set into hierarchy. So we can use the hierarchy, or we can use the individual, or we can use the actual date as it is. I love this. It's a little confusing to start. But I absolutely love this. So now that we have some data, let's do some stuff. I'm going to go ahead and close my filters for now and leave that sit there. I'm on page 1, and this is my giant canvas. These are my visualizations. I can hover over them and see the different types of visualizations that are available to me. And so what I like to do is I'm just going to go down here to table. And I'm just going to click on the visualization and click on that. It gives me my placeholder for the tile. But when I click on that and my tile is active, I have this area right below the visualization. And this is where I get to start formatting and customizing the active tile or the active selection. So in this case, it's a table. So all I really want to do is let's just make a table that shows the item. And all I'm doing is clicking it. As soon as I clicked it, you see what happened? It put it right in there. Now we say, okay, maybe we'll make this a little longer, and I'll just drag that down. And then I'm going to activate that again. That's key. And then I'm going to drag description down below item. Now I could have just checked that, but I was showing you how that both happen, how the two options you have there. So now I have my list of item and description. Not very fancy, I know. We'll get there, but that's a simple visualization. So next, what I want to do, because I have my list of items, what I want to do is I want to try to get, let's look at another one here. We'll use the matrix. Matrix, not Keanu Reeves kind of stuff, but matrix. What I love about this, because it actually has, we have some sales data in here. And what I want to do is I want to get, let's see. I have got, because I picked matrix, which is different than table, I've got different options down here. So I can designate what field is my row, what is my column, and what values. So let's say for row, we want to do salesperson. I'm going to drop that in there. There's my sales folks. And then for my column, maybe we'll do this by month. So I'll just drag my month over. And then we'll widen this so we can see it. And then for values, maybe we'll put in revenue. So now I have a nice table that shows me by month the sales revenue for each of my sales individuals. Pretty cool. Pretty simple, but pretty cool. Nice. Okay, so we don't need it to be this tall. We only have 3 sales folks. So let me close that up. Now, the beauty about Power BI is it's fully interactive when you want it to be. So if I wanted to see this same data change by item. So if I say, hey, this lamp, let me click on that. Now, it activated this and nothing changed. I wanted it to change, but nothing changed. And we have to do some work to link these two queries together. Sometimes the link happens automatically, sometimes it does not. But it's important to know that if you get to this point, and I did that intentionally, why that data is not changing. I would expect, by my desire, that when I click this, it switches and shows me the sales revenue for that item. That's because those two queries are not combined at all. So if we come down here into model, you'll see a visual of my two data sets, my sales table and my products. And had I named this product item, Power Query would have recognized that and made the link automatically. But all I'm going to do is I'm just going to pick the product and drag it over to item to link them. If I highlight it, you can see that it shows that those two are the two that are linked. It just so happens that they're both in the middle of my data list. But as I change the size of it, you see when you're just looking at it, it doesn't show it. You have to highlight it. And then when you're there, you can actually double click this to come in and see the actual relationship. So I'm relating this many to one from sales to products. Probably should go the other way. My list of static products, and then we'll do many to one on the sales. This is another area that tends to trip people up. As I made that change from to, my OK button is grayed out, and that's because I have to tell it which columns to link together. So just by clicking on the two, go ahead and choose that. I'm going to choose both direction for filters so that if I make changes on sales, it updates the product as well. Real easy. Now I've made that relationship, and if I come back up here and I unselect that, my total is 107, and I pick the lamp. Now my data changes dynamically with that selection to show me that information. Now, maybe you wouldn't use a table for this. We'll get into some visualizations here momentarily. But let's say I don't want to use a table for this. Maybe I want to use a slicer. So if I click on the tile and I want to change it, all I do is I select the new visualization I want to change it to. Now in this case, we can only do one column, so it defaulted to item and dropped out that description. But now I have this checkbox. So I can say 1929, anything that ends in a W, I'm just holding the control down. And now I see the total sales revenue for those items. That's pretty cool. Really easy to do. Let's go ahead and save that so we don't lose it. Now, this is by revenue. We talked about this by revenue, but I have, let's see, I've got cost of goods and I've got revenue. So I want to get profit. Now, there are some things I could do out here in the modeling, but I'm going to go back into the query if it lets me. I'll give it just a second. I'm going to go back into the query and add a new column to this data. Now, I'm not going to go to my data source to add the column. I'm going to add it in Power Query. I hope. It doesn't seem to want to be opening. There we go. I'm going into Power Query Editor and I'm going to select that query. I've got my cost of goods and my revenue, and I'm going to create a profit column. Now, there are a couple different things that you can do. There's a lot you can do in here actually. So for example, if I wanted my location to all be uppercase, I just can click it, choose, whoops, I chose new column. Let me remove that. Get rid of those two steps. Click on this again and do it the right way and do uppercase. Well, I guess I'm missing something. At any rate, let's add this column. So we want to get profit. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go and do custom column. Custom column opens up a little wizard, a little window, and I'm going to call this profit. Now, all I'm going to do next is here in the custom column formula is I'm going to say profit or revenue, excuse me, minus cost of goods sold. Real easy to do. I'm just double clicking on that, and it drops it in to the custom column formula, which is awesome. So now if I hit OK, I give it a name, profit. It's going to add that column and do all the math for me. That's really cool. That's how easy it is to add a custom column. And we can right click and change the format of this. If we had errors, we could certainly clear those out. But now when I go and I choose home, close and apply, let's take a look. So we don't have profit over here right now. Boom, right there. Now we have profit. Now let's talk about this just a little bit. If we look at revenue, you see we've got the sum indicator there, and the same for COGS, but we don't for profit. We don't. That means Power Query has treated this as a text. So we're going to go back in and we're going to go to that profit field and right click and change the type to a decimal number. Now when we apply this and come back out to Power BI, we'll see that this changes and boom, now it is treated as a number. So we can go ahead and do some cool stuff. I'm going to unselect these, put it back there, and let's get some profit charts. Let's do some stuff here. Let's do some stuff. So let's say we want to get a simple bar chart, and we'll grab line, the clustered, although that's probably not necessary. We'll just do one. So let me do this one. So this is the KPI, the visualization we're looking to use. And what we're going to do is we're going to take our axis and we're going to do this by month. And then for our, let's see, we'll do for profit by month. So now we have profit by month in a quick, nice and easy chart that we can resize any way we like. But that looks pretty good to me. Now that's for everything that is active. If I want to go back and pick just for that one, those W's, there we go. Just that easy. Everything dynamically changes to match that. Now, when we talk about this area here as the active tile is specific for the design of this visualization. So the first is how we control the fields. The second area is how we format. So if I click on format, that's how I get to some of this change. So profit by month. If I look at general, oops, sorry, it's under title. Profit by month. So I can change this since I made it all uppercase. I can fix it to make it look a little more consistent and clean. If I want that text a little larger, I can do that, maybe align it center, and maybe I want my color to match a little bit more there. So that's how we can do a little bit of customization of the active tile. A lot you can do here. Let me show you another cool thing, and it's different for each one. It's different for each type of visualization. We could change the data colors. Ugh, that looks rough. Let's put it back. We can add, let's see, let's go to background. So right now we just have a clean white canvas background. We could turn the background on. We could change the color of the background. Ugh, but we'll leave it white. And what else? Excuse me, just a second. All right, sorry about that. So now we'll go down and what else can we do? The plot area, that's another cool thing we can do. So we can add an image to maybe make this pop a little bit. We're just going to add an image right in there, have that fit. Very good. Now it gives it a little bit of pizzazz as if it wasn't cool enough. So maybe we want a border. We could put a border around and we'll make the border maybe a certain color, make it match a little bit and maybe thicken it up. There we go. Pretty cool. So now that's our profit by month. Next, what I want to do is use something else, something outside of this. this collection. There's so many in here, but let's do. I want to get a picture of the item, and I have the item URL. Now this is not part of the the standard visualizations, but we can go out to the marketplace and import new visualizations from the marketplace. All sorts of cool ones in here. I'm going to just search for image, and I'm going to bring in this image. That's really how easy it is. Boom, now it's there. You see I have my image visualization. So let's create that. There it is. And we only have one field available. Remember, when our active tile, we look here, we can see what data goes in here. Add data fields here for image URL. I'm just going to drag and drop that in. Now maybe I want to change the size of this a little bit, and we'll put it, kind of put it up here. So now if I click on this, the image of the item changes. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. So now let's go and tell some more of this story. We have profit by month. We have revenue by sales individual. What about some metrics for location? And since we only have a handful of locations, this might be a good time to use the pie chart. Please try to not use a pie chart and have 7,000 different options in the pie chart. I've seen them. They're not all that fun. Let me hit undo because I think I put the pie chart. There we go. And let me put the pie chart there. Just add that. And we'll do something. Let's see. We'll do by location. Let's do profit by location, or maybe units. Let's do units by location. So we have the number of units and then the location. There we go. So now I can see proportionately some information about location. Now, if I wanted to see other information about this, this particular information, other than just hovering over it and seeing the number, maybe I want to see that. When I activate this tile and come in, I'm going to go into format and I'm going to go into data labels, and instead of just category, I'll do maybe percent of total. So now you see I have the percent of total, but now I don't know what each color represents. So we need to turn the legend on. Boom, and that's all we have to do. Now we have a nice little pie chart there, and if we click on a certain item, I'm not sure what I did there. I'm not sure what I did there. Well, we won't do that again. Actually, I think let me switch this. This should be product. Yeah. There we go. That's better. So some of these are only sold in one location. Alrighty. What else? Now let's get a little bit of profit by product. So we have this unit by location, profit by month. Now let's do profit by product. So I'm just answering questions that I may need answers to, all in one dashboard or one report. So I'm going to go ahead and get this situated just a little bit, and I'm going to go and on my visualization for stacked bar chart, I'm going to put my product, and then what did I say? Profit. Whoops, I put the profit there. Let me put product up there. I lost it, so let me add it again. Let me add product and profit is my value. There we go. And we'll make that a little more user-friendly. And now I have profit by product. Maybe I'll pull that all the way down, snap it in there. Profit by product. Let's see what else. How about the impact by sales individual? We'll use the tree here, the tree map, And I'm just going to take and ask Power BI to give me the location, group this by location, and show me the sales folks and by profit. So I get a tree map showing the different locations and the profit by sales individual. And I'll drag this down, maybe make this match a little bit and fit it in there nicely. Now, another thing I can do here is I can change. Maybe I want to show additional information. Maybe I want to get a legend and take the title off. Maybe I want to change the colors or show data labels so I can see the actual numbers in the blocks. If I wanted to switch this, maybe make it a little larger so that the category is more prominent. Maybe not black. Maybe not that, but you get the idea. So then I really start to tweak this. And if I switch this now and I say show for this item, you can see it's west, and I can hover over and see how each relates to one another. Really, really cool stuff. And then last one that I want to show you is we'll do the stacked area chart. And the stacked area chart, we're going to do this by month. So we're going to say, hey, I want to see this by month, and I want the salesperson to be broken out into different colors, and we're going to see the different revenue stream for, for each sales individual. So what I like about this is you can sort of see the comparison from one to the other. And maybe this makes more sense if I slide this one down, and I'll put this one up top so that I can see the trend visually and from a number perspective. So that's pretty cool. Nice little dashboard. I hope you agree. And as I interact with these, you see if I click on the product here, all my other charts automatically update with the live information. So the same is true if I wanted to add another slicer over here, which I think I'll throw in here real quickly. I'll put a slicer by salesperson. So maybe I want to see this information for everything for David. Now everything changed. Everything is showing the information for David's statistics. And then I can even hold the control button down to show just David and Andy, or all three, which defeats the purpose of the slicer, but unchecking them all. Really, really cool. This last area over here, when I highlight a visualization and I come over into the analytics area, depending on the visualization you're using, there are different types of analytics you can add. In this case, we have constant line, so we can add a constant line, which really isn't effective given this data source. But I wanted to point that out because there are great ways to see actual forecasts as well, depending on your chart and the type of data that you have. So real quick then, I wanted to go ahead and show, now that was connected to Excel. And now what I want to show you is, and many of the things that we use every day are in the cloud. And I'm just going to connect to an OData service that is available from, this one is from Business Central, and it's an OData service that is available. I'm just called GL Entries. So I'm going to go ahead and connect to that and transform that. Now, and this is the same Power BI report, everyone, the same one. I connected the other two queries to Excel, and then this to the software as a service OData link from Business Central. I only need a couple fields here. I only need posting. I need entry number, GL account, and amount. Let me find amount. There's a lot of columns in here. So I'm using the control button to highlight those columns. And I'm going to right click and say remove other columns. It gets rid of all that other noise and allows me to focus specifically on the information that I want to see. If I made a mistake, I can remove that. I'm just going to go ahead and rename this. I call it GL data, and I'm going to close and apply that. So on the other page, I'm connected to Excel. I can drop more of this information on the same page. I'm only doing it this way to kind of give you an example of how you might use this. So it's connected out. Now I've got my new data source. I'm going to create a quick table. And I'm going to go and say, give me the general ledger account and the amount. And maybe I'll switch it to a matrix and I'll put in the year across the top. Move that down to column. There we go. So real quick and easy, I've got a simple GL financial report, real easy, nothing fancy. I can still, on the same report, just minimize that down, and I'm going to create another matrix, and I'm going to say the product, and then I want to put the cost of goods, the revenue, whoops, and the profit, all in columns there. And I think I put it in the wrong area. Yeah, they go in the values, sorry. Boom. So even though they're different data sources, I can have them both in the same report showing me the information. I absolutely love that. I hope you do too. That is a bit about Power BI, building out a dashboard, a pretty impactful dashboard, I believe anyway. I hope you enjoyed that. We're nearing at the top of the hour. So I wanted to be sure to share with you a link, this QR code, because we are asking for you to fill out a survey for our time today. You can either get to it from the link below when we deliver this slide deck to you, but if you'll also get an email from us with asking for the survey. We're giving away an Amazon gift card. You can take a picture of that QR code with your phone. David's email's on there, my email's on there. Look for that survey. If you were at the Excel session last week, email one of us. If you haven't received the survey, we heard from a lot of folks that it went to the spam, the junk folder. So please check there because we're giving away an Amazon gift card. We value your feedback. That also has the link to get the Excel file and the slide deck. And the same will be true for today's session. I will get that Power BI PBIX file and that sample Excel file for you to follow along in the video and build the exact same thing we did here today. I hope that this was valuable to you. Thank you so very much for joining us. Please be sure to remember to register for our session next week, same time on Wednesday, 1 p.m. Eastern, about office tips and tricks, a little bit faster, a little bit more furious, but lots of cool stuff. I hope you can join us there. Thank you again so very, very much, everyone. I hope you're staying safe and be well.